All right, let me just let this soak in for a second here, just because, oh, yes, it is playoff baseball in Chicago, and it doesn't happen too often. So just like the weather today, enjoy it while it lasts, because it is the last day of September. The temperatures are reaching the 80s here in Chicago, and it's a perfect day or evening later on to sit on the front stoop and talk about it with your neighbors, have a beer, and do whatever you please. That is the podcast. It is the Front Stoop Podcast here. I'm Tom Barnas. Thanks for stopping by. And you know what? I really wanted to just be a dad, be a dude who lives in Chicago, talks about his job, talks about what he does in and around the city. And this is the place for me to do that. So a little therapeutic, if you will, but more or less just, shooting the shit with you. Whatever. And today being that is the first day of the playoffs, the divisional round of the MLB playoffs in Chicago, the Cubs are playing the Padres, which, if you have any remnants of the 1984 season, that was disastrous for the Cubs. They blew it. The Padres went on to the World Series, lost to the Detroit Tigers, who are also in the playoffs this year. I believe they're playing right now. So I'm going to make this quick just because I don't want to spend the entire time talking about baseball games I want to watch, but I really wanted to talk about this podcast and what it's all about, this being the first one of the Front Stoop podcast. It's about what you would do when you're sitting on the stoop, walking by, especially if you live in the city, you know what the front stoop is all about. It's like the French room, but outside. You kind of hang out, you have your beer. There are certain people who amp it up and they have they have a little fire pit on the stoop. I swear to God, it's true. I've seen it. And then, if you retreat in the winter back to the garage, you kind of set that up as your stoop adjacent. But for the real troopers, you're out there, in the cold, you get your little seat cushion, you hang out on your stoop because you see your neighbors. And, when I first moved to this block, I live on Austin Avenue on the northwest side. When I first moved to this block, nobody was on their stoop. It never happened. People didn't stay outside. And now, granted, this was also sort of pandemic-ish times. It may have been 2021. So people are still terrified. People are still wearing masks outside. So that kind of tells you where the world was at that time. So, but a lot of older people on the block. And now that the younger folks are kind of moving in, you see a lot more strollers, a lot more dogs walking every evening and afternoon and morning for that matter. Now you see a ton of people. It's a great way to connect with your neighbors. So I thought this would be a great way for me to connect with you. So that's why we're doing this. And being that it is the Cubs' first game at Wrigley Field since 2020, the pandemic year, where they had all those weird advertisements in the outfield instead of people, and the cutouts of people in the stands. If you wanted to pay an obscene amount of money to go to a charity of some kind, you could have your likeness in the stand. They only had like 9 of them out there, whatever. But I wanted to tell a story about 2016 because I was fortunate enough to go to every home playoff game and World Series game that year. I had season tickets for 20 years with my brother. And up until that time, season tickets was like a luxury to have. It was really before StubHub took off to what it is now in the secondary ticket market. Is what it is now. So you really, really had to covet these tickets. And when you had them, you didn't blow it on anything. You wanted to keep it all for yourself. And when you wanted to sell them, you made some good money because it was like Craigslist in like the beginning of StubHub. But everybody was still kind of wary of StubHub. They all thought it was full of crap. It turns out it kind of is with the fees. Am I right? So I go to I believe it's game 6 of the National League Championship Series against the Dodgers, 2016 at Wrigley Field. And for those of you who know my career and have watched my other channels or listened to other podcasts, I worked at WGN for a long time, like 15 years. And if you're from Chicago and you watch that particular newscast in that program, there's the Around Town segment with Annabelle Aval that she has done a fantastic job for years. But there's a camera person who has done the Around Town segment for most of the time Around Town has been on the air. And Sweary Mary, or Mare, as I call her, is she's the camera person Monday through Thursday. She got Friday off on her sweet deal that she has. No, she works 12 hours every day. That's why she gets Friday off. Either way, Mary's husband at the time worked at Wrigley Field doing security, and Mare knew how much I loved the Cubs. I had the season tickets. I was kind of heartbroken I wasn't going to get to go to this game, but I was probably going to sell my soul to go to it. So either way, Mare offers up a beautiful gesture. She says, "Hey, Todd got tickets. Do you want to go to the game?" Well, yeah, hell yeah, I want to go to the game. So Mara and I go. Now I believe at that, because it was like a weird time. The game started at like 6:40 or something because of Eastern time. They had to make it right or whatever. It was a weird time to start. But I, being me and season ticket holder and a Cubs fan since was old enough to remember baseball, I love the Cubs. And I was like, you know what? I'm getting the entire playoff process, even the years prior when they were good, I probably get to the field an hour and a half before just to soak it all in, because it doesn't happen all that often. You want to soak it all in. And I remember like walking to the park, and you're hearing like music, you're hearing the pregame from houses when you're walking down Grace Street, which is a great place to park, is Grace, if you're a little bit west of the stadium, and you walk all the way down to the park and you hit like Grace and Waveland, or Grace and, like, I don't know, maybe before like Southport. And they have like these giant salt trucks kind of blocking the way so cars can't like access the area, because it's a huge security risk, right? But I remember walking in there, and it's getting later into the fall, so it's getting a little darker earlier. So it's got this weird glow about Wrigleyville, right? And there's people out, the bars are all open, the doors are open, like summertime, but everybody's wearing sweatshirts, which is perfect. The people are walking by and they're just enjoying themselves, right? And I remember feeling that feeling. And I got to laugh right now, because right now I'm watching Major League at the same time I'm talking about this, just to psych myself up for the game later. Major League, it's right where he's about to call a shot. Not Roger Dorn, Jake Taylor about to call a shot. So it's one of my favorite parts. Anyhow, so you're walking into the park and you're enjoying this. So I get to Wrigley, and in 2016, it's very much not what it looks like today. Gallagher Way is not quite, I don't remember it being all the way done. I think it was in the process. Certainly the buildings around Wrigley Field are not done, especially the one where like the Harley's in and the movie theater. That building was just like skeleton, like it was very far from being completed. So I remember in Gallagher Way didn't have all of these statues. I believe Ernie Banks was just to the north of the Wrigley Marquee, and Ron Santo was down by Sheffield and Addison. And that's where I told Mayor I'd meet her. I'm like, I'll meet you down by Santo, down on because we were sitting in the right field bleachers. So I thought, why not? Seems perfect. So I walk over to that area, and there's people everywhere, right? I mean, there are people everywhere. You can't tell the difference between the platform that's the sidewalk, and this is before that FanDuel or whatever fan DraftKings or DraftKings, there it is. That whole thing. This is when this is just a big empty sidewalk walking to right field on Addison. You know that nice walk there, and there's that like triangle looking parcel of land that is now where they have the sports betting. That was just empty sidewalk with like a few vendors back in the day, and it was great. Anyhow, so you walk past the little outside area that they had. There was still a little outside area that was right there, and you kind of hang out and you're waiting. The gates are open, they're letting people in, and like I said, Wrigley is just barely finished. The inside of Wrigley, the big scoreboards are up and everything else like that, but the rest of the neighborhood is still kind of a work in progress. So I'm waiting there for Mayor, and you hear people having little side conversations over here, over there, and then you start to hear like sniffles and crying and gasps, and you're like, what the hell's going on, So I'm sitting back, right by the statue, waiting, and I'm looking at the clock, and we probably about 50 minutes to game time. So I'm like, we gotta go. Like, I want to get in the park. I'm starting to freak out because I'm outside the park, but I can't get in because Mare has the tickets. And Mare is old school Chicago. I'll get there when I get there. I know a good parking spot kind of a person. So, and it was very true. She did. And we got in, and, I get a text from her, I'll see you in 10 minutes. So I'm like, okay. So I'm waiting there, and I keep hearing the gasps again. Okay, now the Indians just won it in Major League. Just thought I'd keep you updated. So I really thought, okay, I'm enjoying this atmosphere. The Cubs could go to the World Series tonight. In fact, I felt it in my bones that they were going to go, because they were just so good that year, and there was so much magic that happened. Not like this year. This year's different. This is like the team that is like, I have a love-hate relationship with this version of the Cubs, because they are the team that is the hardest to get behind, because They should be so good. They were so good. Maybe we got spoiled at how good they were. And then, then they have games where they lay an egg and you're like your star pitcher that, that the general manager talked about forever and ever, and how good they're going to be, can't pitch. Your big trade guy that you got, doesn't really play all that well. Meanwhile, you traded another guy away for just money to the Yankees. Nice job. And, your team's not hitting. So, like, this is like one of the most annoying good Cubs teams I can ever remember. That's the best way. They're like the worst good team I can ever remember. So that's kind of the love-hate I have with them. So 2016, not that feeling. It was just something a little bit magical than that, So I'll get to this now. So I'm waiting outside of Wrigley, right by the Ron Santos statue, and you hear this woman and this mother kind of like crying and just kind of pleading with people, and people are like shaking their head and they're putting up their hand and they're walking away from them, and they're kind of you just know when somebody's at a desperate spot, right? And you can feel it. So I kind of like nudge my way closer and closer and closer to this person, and I realize that they are asking people to take in their dad to the game. And I'm like, well, what's the big deal about that? You don't, like, if you don't have a ticket, you don't sell. Well, it turns out dad was passed, and dad was in a small canister. I don't know if I have one here. I think I kept it. But it was a small canister. Hold on. I'm looking. Oh, yeah, here it is. So it looked like this, right? So this kind of canister, this is what their dad was in. It was in this kind of canister. You open it up. I mean, this one actually has film in it, but so this is her dad, right? So she gives me this thing and she's like, oh my gosh, can you please, please, please? I asked them, like, what's going on? Are you okay? I just want to take my dad. It was his lifelong dream to go in to see the Cubs win the World Series. He was a season ticket holder. He died like last week, and his lifelong dream was to get into Wrigley Field for one of these kind of playoff games. So I instantly was like, oh yeah, I'll take him. What's his name? They're like, oh, it's Frank. I'm like, all right, well, I'll take Frank into the game. No problem. Because it's the least I could do. Like, it just made sense to me. Now, before anybody like wants to write about how this could be gross because it's ash and it's whatever. Come on, be human about the whole thing, okay? Because this woman is crying, and up until that point, 108 years, friends, 108 years since they won the World Series. So you're not talking about how much this means to just like one generation. It's multi-generations. And I have a grandfather who died in 1986 and didn't see them in the 45 World Series because he was fighting for our country in World War II. And prior to that, like 1932 World Series, he was a young man. I think he was born in 1912. So like he was a young man, but it was different. But he's never seen them win a World Series. So I can kind of sympathize for this woman. I'm like, okay, fine. So my dad, born in 1951, never seen the Cubs in the World Series. So it's 2016. It's been a minute, right? For my dad. So I said, I'll take him in and I'll walk in the ballpark. And I said, when the Cubs win, I will throw it onto the field. And that's what I said I would tell this woman. And I said, I looked her dead in the eye and I said, I promise that I will take your dad, and when they win, his ashes will be spread on the field of Wrigley Field. So get into the ballpark. And I put Frank in my pocket. It's a little chilly out, so I have like a sweatshirt on or what have you. Mary gets there, and we go, and I tell Mary the plan. And Mary's like, oh, that's so nice. Good for you. You're a saint. Mary's actually very sweet. We sit in our bleachers, and Mary and I are having vodka sodas. We're in the bag. We're having a great time because the Cubs are winning. And people are having a great time around us. We're in the bleachers. We're right behind, maybe like 6 rows up from the front row bleachers. So we're right in home run territory. And, like Jason Hayward is like that right there, right? So, the game's going on. The Cubs are winning. We're getting closer. Finally, it's the bottom of the 8th. The Cubs get out of that inning. And I look at Mary. I'm like, oh crap! Like we can win it. We can win it. We're up by. I forgot what the score was. I think Wilson Contreras hit a home run to put us up pretty big at that point. So it was pretty exciting, right? And they get one out in the top of the 9th. And Mary like gives me the shoulder, and she's like, Tom, we like get ready. And I'm like, you're right. And I look, and there's a runner on first base. There's one out. It's the top of the 9th inning. And I look at Mary, and I'm like, they're gonna win. They're gonna hit a double play. and the Cubs are going to turn a double play. They're going to win. So I had like fumbling getting out the canister like this, right? So I get out the canister and I open it like this and I put down the cap. So, and I'm holding it like this, right? And I say, they're going to hit a double play and they're going to win the game. I'm like, I have no doubt. So sure enough, next pitch hit to Baez to Russell to, and I'm pretty sure this is right, or it could be the reverse. I don't know if Addison Russell is playing shortstop on that particular day, but let's just go with that. To Rizzo. Rizzo catches the ball. As Rizzo catches the ball, I throw this canister up in the air. So now when the canister's flying in the air, now mind you, it didn't get on anybody, so relax. So the canister's going like this, and it's flying through the air, and I throw it like this, and as it goes down like this and out, so, or like the reverse, down and out, basically the wind catches it and it goes right. And then while it's like settling in the air, there's beer flying everywhere. There's people high-fiving. It's incredible. And Mary's hugging me. They won. They're going to I think the first thing I said to her was, the Cubs are going to the World Series. Like in astonishment, disbelief, and all euphoric joy all at the same time. So I'm like, oh my God, the Cubs are going to the World Series. It's fantastic, right? And I look and I see the dust settling over the field. And it's just like this perfect dust settling over the field. And Mary looks at it and she's like, God bless you, Frank. And we're both crying because they won, because of Frank and the whole thing. It was just an incredible moment to be at Wrigley Field when the Cubs went to the World Series since the first time since 1945. So very well before anybody I really know, that remembers it. So my grandma was alive. She remembers it. She claims she did at the time. Either way, it was a big deal. So we're celebrating, having a good time. Everybody's high-fiving everybody. Everybody's soaked in beer in the outfield. I see the canister like on the grass, and I just knew, I'm like, all right, Frank is where he should be. He enjoyed this. God bless you, Frank, And then the party really starts happening. So Mary and I are like, oh, what are we going to do? We're having a good time. Should we go to a bar? And then we look around and nobody's leaving, right? Nobody's leaving the ballpark. It's packed. So we're kind of like, all right, we shimmy our way up to the concourse that is above, like the bleachers, right? And you look over the rail and there is Sheffield Avenue, and it is wall-to-wall humans. I have never seen anything quite like that in my entire life. And I've been to many concerts, many baseball and football games. Wall-to-wall humans. It looked terrifying, actually, but it was just like euphoric. Everybody was having a good time. The city kind of felt a little bit closer. And Mary and I go, we're not going out there. Like, we're safer in here, So we're in the news business, right? So we're kind of like, yeah, let's stay in here. I think this is probably the better bet in case things go sideways outside. So we stay inside and we kind of shimmy our way over to the right field, the big, Jumbotron in right field. So we get underneath it because they were still selling drinks, I think, at the time, even though they weren't supposed to. Somebody was selling drinks. So we like grabbed another vodka soda. We're having a good time. And then, there's the security guards telling people to leave, but everybody's having a good time. Nobody's really listening to security guards because there's other people doing other crazy things that they have to pay attention to. So we're just like underneath like our little cove that is underneath that video board, right? All of a sudden you see like the stanchion go around where we're at. And we're like, what the hell's going on? Like, oh, are we in trouble? Like, we thought we were in trouble. And come to find out that the front office of the Cubs start walking in that area. Like the front office people that are not in the dugout celebrating, they want to go celebrate. So all of a sudden there's these front office people that you see and that you've seen in like news conferences, like in the background. They're all out there. They're all wearing their W. I remember they had these really awesome W jackets. So it was just a magical scene, right? You're roped into this area. The Cubs front office is out there and bottles of champagne are being passed around. I kid you not. I have a bottle of champagne from that night that I kept from that moment all the way till now. It's in my basement, and it's it's in a little shrine area from the soaking W flag towels that they gave out that day. I had that to wipe my face, and I stuffed that inside the champagne bottle, and it was just magic, man. It was so fun. I'll never forget that moment in my life ever. The entire day, the jitters going to the ballpark, meeting the woman and her daughter, meeting Frank getting his due out on the field at Wrigley. The celebration, the beer bath, the champagne bath. I could only hope that we have something similar here in 2025. And it would be kind of poetic because 2015 is when the Cubs made it to their first National League Championship Series since 1945. So this would be the first time, if they can get back there, it would celebrate that 2015 team that people seem to forget about. But that 2015 team was really good. They just got beat up by a really good Mets team. So there's no Mets this year. We got to get past the Padres, the Brewers, the Dodgers, and eventually, the Blue Jays or Yankees in the World Series. But one can hope, right? There's something magical about Cubs baseball in October in Chicago. It's 80 degrees. This is just like how it was in 2016. Very warm to start the playoff round, and God can only hope that we might get a little more playoff baseball through the end of October here in Chicago, and maybe the first couple days we'll celebrate a World Series victory parade in November. That'd be pretty rad, man. So that is my take on the first game of the playoffs here in Chicago and in Major League Baseball for that matter here in 2025. I thought I'd share that little story with you. It was magical. The ballpark didn't empty out for hours. You kind of just made your way, stumbled back to your car, stumbled all the way back to your car, wherever you parked that day. It was just magic, man. It was, and the city was whole. We were one. There was no fighting. There was no craziness in the White House and thinking Chicago is a rat hole or whatever the hell they say. It was just pure euphoria. And God, man, we really could use some of that now. So I lean on baseball to do it yet once again and give us something beautiful to look at and talk about. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it. This is a new one for me, so I don't know how this one's going to go, but it's just conversations on the stoop, right? So here we are. My name is Tom Barnas. Please subscribe to this and other things that I do. It really does help. And go Cubbies.